Inshallah, we shall begin. Let's say with the Fatiha. بنيتنا وأسلافنا الصالحين وبنيتي أن الله يرزقنا خالصة الإيمان واليقين وأن الله يرزقنا نور الإيمان والدين وأن الله يفتح علينا فتوح العارفين ويفقهنا في الدين. لهذه النية ولكل نية صالحة وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم بسر الأسرار الفاتحة. Before we begin our discussion today, I just want to inform everyone that there might be an electricity cut during the course of the session. If there is, I will be switching to the alternative, battery source, and that will take 5 minutes before I, inshallah, rejoin the discussion. All right, Sister Atika, can you please share the text of the Aqaid? Okay, no worries then. Okay. All right, that's okay. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. We review our discussion here of al-Nasafi, and we are now on the discussion of sins or of al-dhunub and its relation to al-kufr, the commission of which will render a person outside the fold of Islam. And of course, our brothers who have helped draw the poster draws the relationship, I suppose, between the notion of exceeding the bounds of what is acceptable to the Muslim community as a result of the source of the Sharia and the culture, which is prevalent. As we know, a bit of social commentary on what we are now experiencing today. More than 2 centuries ago, or centuries ago, John Locke of England has written a treatise in the letter concerning toleration. John Locke tried to make an argument for the denominations and the schisms to be tolerant of each other. Including stop meaning toleration, and of course with the 17 words, the all right. Sorry, I was cut out, but can you hear me now? Okay. Yes. So as I was saying about the background of the doctrine of toleration in the modern West, yes, arose in the spirit of realization politically from the dangers of the internecine strife and war between the Christian denominations, and also at the same time due to the rise of the modern consciousness and the need to find a new basis for the modern nation state, which since in the tradition of Thomas Hobbes is established based on the notion of what they call the social contract. Yes, that somehow the social contract is necessary in order to establish peace, which is the foundations of a nation state. And of course, in the formulation of Hobbes initially, it meant giving to the sovereign or assenting the sovereign a portion of your freedom in order to ensure the safety of your life. John Locke then, in his two treatises on government, to argue for a stronger basis of civil liberties based on his perception of his experiment on the original conditions of man as beings seeking liberty. Yes, their being on earth is and they are possessing of rational capacity and language, and also they are being born into this world without property, but their ability to mix into the world, their labor, entailing that they can then own property. This all being the basis of his political philosophy, which, let us say, set the foundations of a liberal government. And further, within the discourse, as we said, of religious toleration, he had written this letter concerning toleration, and upon which is established the modern notion that toleration is part and parcel of modernity. If let us say we wish to enjoy, yes, if we wish to enjoy the freedoms that we set for ourselves. So toleration is part and parcel of the modern liberal society, in order that everyone can enjoy their freedom. Of course, the liberals, they set limits to such freedoms. For example, you don't have a freedom to others. Yes, and you have the freedom to of speech. You have the freedom of, let us say, organization. You have the freedom to have property and several other freedoms. But that basis of the modern nation state, argued as it is from the foundations of modern philosophy, led then to the experiments of the nation states that we have then seen, and in the United States of America with the Federalist Papers and the other foundational thinkers of that era, we see then it coming into being. But while toleration has been established as an important crucible, an important foundation, yes, of modern nation living, in other words, simplified as live and let live, we see that every now and then, yes, people seem to be using either their freedom or seems to exceed the limits of their freedom until they harm others because they have not solved the foundational issues. Yes, while the fact that they wish to save or protect the rights of others, internal problems of racism, of let us say sexism, problems of class struggles, all of these things remain to not remain unaddressed in its fundamental origins. There is, as we have noted, there is no magical formula, or there is no discipline of the self. Yes, there is no discipline of the self that gives a person a strong moral imperative, yes, to be good over and beyond the requirements of civic liberties. So with this, we have seen then in more recent times with the rise of personal technologies, in particular the rise of social media and the rise of one's personal voices, we see then the tendency of or the collective to, let us say, to cancel certain personalities and stars and so on. Of course, with their own motivation. Sometimes to cancel a person would mean to merely disregard the person or to shame him. Cardinal Ratzinger, the previous pope, summarized as what he calls the dictatorship of relativism, since values have come to be relative, and values have now come to replace virtues as the foundation of ethical behavior, and whatever one happens to values serves as the foundation. So therefore, relativism runs wild. But we've dealt with the problem of relativism in our first or two or second discussion when we discussed knowledge. Here, we wish to discuss more specifically the notion of kufur and how it informed the body politic within the Islamic intellectual tradition, and as summarized now in the Aqaid al-Nasafi. First and foremost, the term kufur, as we know, has its, in terms of its semantic content, has its foundations in the Quran, certainly, as all fundamental beliefs in the religion of Islam. In the Quran, as we know, the term kufr retains some of its original meanings in the root kafara, which is to cover something. Yes, to cover something, meaning to say to disallow it from, let us say, from notice. Yes, supposing if you to cover the seed in the ground, that's kafara. And as Professor Attas has outlined in the historical fact and fiction, the Malay word kapur, yes, derives the Arabic kafur, an act of covering the smell of something, yes, which is used for the English, again another cognate word, camphor, yes, of which the source is abundant in the Malay archipelago, the land of Barus, yes, where Sheikh Hamzah al-Fansuri came from. So Professor Attas uses that as an argument to prove that the existence of the Malay world is known as early as the prophetic times. In fact, earlier, because such products were used in the Middle East and in the Mediterranean, predating Islam. But nevertheless, so the act of kafara means to cover something, and in relation to kufur, which is defined, which is seen in the Quran as the highest vice, yes, and opposite of iman, which is the highest virtue, we see that the act of kufur or kafara does not mean merely disbelief, yes, to disbelief in particular aspects of the religion. In the Quran, of course, such uses are found where Allah Subhanahu wa Taala challenges the mushrikeen, the polytheists of Mecca, who disbelieve in the reality of the afterlife, who had trouble believing in the prophecy of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who had trouble in accepting in relation to the prophecy of the Prophet several things. They say that an Arabic Quran, or they say that that he is a soothsayer, or that he is insane, or that he has been taught this work. Mu'allamun majnoon, yes, he is somebody who is crazy, who has learned his work from another person. So that's kufur in the prophecy of the Prophet. And there is also kufur in the reality of the afterlife. Yes, seeing in their minds that it is something fantastical, it is something for them that they couldn't fathom. Yes, of course, because their minds, yes, have been shaped just as regular consciousness have been shaped by what we call the process of induction, isn't it? How did we come to arrive to the conclusion? that there is fire if we detect smoke? Or how did we come to the conclusion that that water will boil if heat and it reaches, say, 100 degrees? All of these things comes as a result of experience. And the inductive process is such that after a certain number, the possibility of it turning the other way diminishes. Yes, the possibility of it turning the other way diminishes. Meaning, say that in our first, let us say, infant experience of certain things, it was an open possibility. Yes, anything could happen. Gradually, once we have experienced it a number of times, and with the strengthening of the belief via our surrounding and environment, our parents and reports and so on, gradually it becomes established that that's a law like that. So the mushrikun, the polytheists, yes, they have used and they have offered arguments against the Prophet about the reality of the afterlife by looking at the bones and looking at how living beings, yes, then it becomes reduced to dust. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenges them by saying that, well, what about the first creation? Yes, what about the first creation? What about your continuous creation? What about your development? Yes, from infancy to childhood to adolescence and so on. All of these things are as miraculous if you think about it. So the one who is capable of creating the universe for the first time certainly is able to recreate it. And that's a very powerful argument against the kufr, against the disbelief. Yes. And of course, in the Quran is also used the notion of misbelief. Yes. As part of kufr. Like the case of shaitan, the case of Iblis is a case of misbelief, meaning to say he believed wrongly or he took the wrong conclusions from his faulty reasoning. Like when God commanded him to obey or to prostrate to Adam. Yes, Abba was takbar. Yes, he became haughty and he became arrogant. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so he argued with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, saying that I am better than him. You have created me from fire and you have created him from earth. So I must be superior, like that. So this kufr, yes, is not a matter of disbelief per se. Yes, it is rather misbelief. Yes, this misbelief is motivated by his arrogance. Arrogance has a tendency to blind a person. Yes, ingratitude has a tendency to blind a person. It comes from a satanic aspect. Yes, of the self. Yes, of which human beings have a portion, with the exception of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, either the proclivities are allowed to be fostered and developed, or the proclivities are reduced until it no longer brings effect. But in the generality of mankind, that the satanic aspect, yes, can lead to the kufr of disbelief and misbelief. And further, as we know, the other primary connotation in the Quran is that kufr is the opposite of shukr. That kufr is in ingratitude. Yes, to be ungrateful of the favors of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So in the Quranic semantic field, as we see in the various connotations in the Quran, there is a particular kind of heart that is being trained and fostered. As we know, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala describes the heart of the believer. Yes, in Surah Al-Anfal, indeed, in alladhina amanu idza dzukirallah. Indeed, those who have iman, if Allah is mentioned, wajilat qulubuhum. Their hearts are light. Yes, out of fear, reverential awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa idza tuliyat alayhim. And if his signs or his favors, including the verse of the Quran, is mentioned unto him, zadathum imana. Their iman ever increases. The opposite of the one who has iman, or the kafir in this case, the one who responds with ungratefulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described their hearts as being hardened. Yes, ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُم. Indeed, their heart has become hardened. Hardened as in suffering death. Yes, no longer able to perform its true function of being a spiritual organ of cognition. Yes, possessing equally perception, understanding, and also love, appreciation. Yes, it's a living relation with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. But a person who is ungrateful, then they will suffer a hardening of their hearts until it no longer functions. Lahum qulubun la yafqahuna biha. They have a heart, but they possess no understanding with it. Yes, and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala also describes in Surah Al-Baqarah that it becomes hardened, and if so, it becomes even harder than rocks, because rocks are perceived in nature that some rocks, if you were to crush it, that there is water within it. Yes, meaning to say that there is still life. Some other rocks are able to be crushed. Yes, and some other rocks are seen straight to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala to bow down. So the human heart, at least the spiritual heart, once it becomes hardened, possesses none of such abilities. And then the other description of the heart of the kafir in the Quran is that it is veiled, akinna. Yes, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala describes, فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ. Yes, and if you read the Quran, we shall then impose فَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. We shall impose between you and those who have no iman, hijaban mastura. Yes, it is a veil, a protective veil. Yes, and we shall place in their hearts al-akinna. Yes, it is a veil that veils their heart, ala qulubihim. And in other instances, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala also describes that in their hearts, their hearts has already been locked. Yes, has already been locked. Of which, of course, the heart of the believer, on the other hand, is open with Surah Al-Fatiha. Is open, but with the realization of their closeness and proximity to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So these are some of the discussions pertaining to the Quranic notion. So we see then, which is why Imam Al-Ghazali in his work delimiting between the boundaries of iman and kufr, the Faisal al-Tafriqah, he explains that the ultimate reality of iman and kufr refers to the alamul malakut, or asrar alamul malakut. It is from the secrets of the angelic realms. It is not something that a person who is, let us say, who dwells in this earth, and who is attracted to the gravitational pull of the dunya, is able to appreciate. Imam Al-Ghazali questions in the Faisal al-Afriqa, he said, of these spiritual realities, how can a person who has taken his ma'bud, his deity, the sultan, meaning to say, how can a person who worships power experience understand these subtle secrets? And secondly, how can a person who has taken the qibla, dinar wa dirham? And it is interesting, Imam Al-Ghazali uses for qibla, money. Yes, I mean to say the direction, because you're attracted to wealth. And for worship, power. Yes, because it makes a person in the face of power becomes, let's say, submissive. Yes, submissive to structures of power. Dinar wa dirham becomes the qibla. Yes, and then Imam Al-Ghazali quotes the Quran. And two more things, and desire. Yes, their desire, instead of to please Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, becomes the achievement of status. And then finally, what they understand as law, yes, is whatever happens to be in agreement with their own lust and desires. Yes, as Allah Subhanahu wa Taala commanded the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, "Fa'arid an man tawalla an dhikrina." So turn away, therefore, from a person who turns away from the remembrance of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Lam yurid, and he or she does not desire except the life of this world, illa hayatud dunya. And then Allah Subhanahu wa Taala chastises them with the statement, "Tilka mablaghuhum min al-ilmi." That is the extent of their knowledge. Yes, the extent of their knowledge. Since the extent of their knowledge, of which they have certainty, of which they have a desire and love for is only this world, their desire certainly will only turn towards it. Yes. And in another verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described that وَكَثِيرٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ, and a lot of humanity, they have no knowledge. Yes. يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Even in the life of this world, they only know but the external aspects of it. And if we understand the world to be something temporary, fleeting, and and lower, yes, in comparison with the akhirah, with it, which is superior, permanent, everlasting, yes, is whose products and whose reality knows no defects, yes, certainly then it is a mark of stupidity for a person to be preferring the life of the dunya, if in doing so it threatens your success in the akhirah. Yes, as it is said also in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not place two hearts, yes, within the chest of a person. The love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, according to the Sufi, that does not the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the love of the dunya does not commingle within a single heart. Nevertheless, then, from the discussion of sins in the Aqad al-Nasafi, we see then that Imam al-Nasafi begins his statement with the discussion of al-Kabair, yes, great sin. Yes, al-Kabair. A great sin does not remove from belief the one who believes, nor does it lead him into unbelief. Allah does not forgive the one who joins another with himself, but he pardons whomsoever he wills any sin, whether great or small, except this. The punishment of sin is permissible, and also pardon of a great sin, if it is not on the nature of considering lawful what is forbidden, for that is unbelief. The intercession of the messengers is established by narratives in the case of those who commit great sins, and those of the believers who commit great sins do not remain forever in the fire. So first, the notion of al-kabir, yes, an enormity. What is an enormity? First, of course, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, said that the great sins are nine. He enumerates them. First, al-shirk billah, and second, murder. Yes, and third, slandering a chaste woman by a charge of adultery, and then the very act adultery, as zina, and then followed by fleeing from war against unbelievers, sorcery, devouring the property of an orphan, disobedience to Muslim parents, and contravening the ordinances concerning the sacred territory. Ilhad fil haram al-Makkah wal Madinah. And then, of course, Abu Hurairah added to this al-riba. And Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu karamallahu wajhah added as-sarqah, stealing, wal khamar, wine drinking. Of course, in a great sin has been said to be anything the corruption of which is like the corruption of the things already mentioned, or more than it, or it is that concerning which the Sharia threatens a punishment. And also, any great sin, al-kabira, is a sin which a person persists in. So it becomes a great sin if it is a minor sin that a person habitually persists in, because that hardens the heart, and that creates the notion of safety, or the false notion of false belief of safety with regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment. So it becomes a great sin. So it does not remove. So this is the position of the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. As we know that the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah more often, in most cases, are in the middle position between two extremes. Yes. So with regards to the matter of sinning and its relations to kufr, the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah is in between the polar opposites, the extremity of the Khawarij and the extremity of the Murji'ah. The Khawarij hold, I suppose, in our time still, if there are rebranding of the same reality, that the commission of great sins will render a person a kafir. Yes, and that's their basis for murdering the Sahaba and waging war against them. Because as we know, yes, the prophetic injunctions from the collection of the prophetic ahadith and how Medina was established, the prophetic city, is that apostasy or ar-ridda has consequences upon a person's life, has consequences upon a person's property, has consequences upon the permissibility of eating what he slaughters. It also has consequences upon his death. Yes, that he is not to be preyed upon. Yes, he is not even to be washed. Yes, oh no, he's not to be preyed upon. And on the other hand, yes, the Ummah has agreed from the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that a person who is known to have committed the kaba'ir, a fornicator, for example, or any other of that stature, that they are to be washed and they are to be buried, and certainly they are to be prayed. Yes. So therefore it has consequences. And as we know, during the time of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, that one of the earliest tasks that he committed himself to, yes, upon the passing of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was to wage war against the apostates, especially those who renounce giving zakah. In other words, those who separated between the obligation of prayer and the obligation of zakah. So some people, may question, I suppose some latter-day historians, isn't this a case of let us say, waging war against a person who merely committed the kaba'ir? Well, those who refused to pay zakat to Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was not merely committing the great sin of refusing a wajib. They also consider it not a wajib. It is the act of istihlal, making something haram halal. Now that is the aspect of that leads to kufr. So similarly, then in case of the other wajibat and alum birurah min ad-din, things which is established by ijma, or things which is established by consensus, which is clearly known in the religion. Any of these things, that if a person were to declare that they are against that which is agreed upon, let us say a person were to say that salat is not something, not wajib, as opposed to merely leaving it because someone is weak, or a person, for example, who, so there's a few conditions that leads to kufr in this case. So one, let us say a person who drinks alcohol, who drinks an intoxicant, consumes an intoxicant, is sinful, and it is a kabir, it is an enormity. However, the act of making it halal, yes, or to take lightly of it, or to mock the Muslim, to mock its ban, yes, like that. Now that's kufr, yes. But a person who succumbs to weakness towards some of these affairs, then istitabah, the hope of taubah is still upon him, because he has not changed in framework. The other thing that leads to kufr in this case is the aspects of the religion pertaining to belief. Yes, and some of the ulama, they were careful about this. Some of them did not go as far as saying that some of the bid'ahs in belief, let us say like the Mu'tazilis, who denied the possibility of what they call the beatific vision in the akhirah, their belief in the manzilah bainal manzilatain, a condition between iman and kufur, yes, which is neither this nor that. They are extrapolating the justice of God to make it forceful upon him to do what is best for human beings. They are saying that the Quran is created, of course, depending on what is the implication. And a person is not taken, according to the Fiqh Akbar of Imam Abu Hanifa or the commentary, that a person is not taken as to the consequence or the corollaries of his statements. He's only taken to be responsible if the corollaries are said and he accepts the corollaries, and only then, if utter such thing, then it needs to go for. But as for these other bid'ah, yes, these other forms of innovation which is not known in the time of the Sahaba and which may positively be in error, yes, as the letter the Ahlus Sunnah was to demonstrate, the Asha'ir and the Maturidi, who are able to demonstrate against the, let us say, the Mu'tazili. These forms of bid'ah have been taken by the great imams like Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari to not be expressly kufur, with the exception of a few things. Say anthropomorphism is kufur, meaning to say to liken God with his creation is kufur. Similarly, some of the beliefs of the philosophers is kufur. Yes, if it, as it turns out, they believe so. Like when they believe, suppose when they deny of God knowledge of the particulars, or when they acclaim or when they deny, yes, against the zahir of the Sharia, when they deny bodily resurrection in the Yawmul Akhirah, and so on and so forth. Um, so therefore, there's in the Sulam Tawfiq of Abdullah bin Hussein bin Tahir in the beginning section, he outlined, which is extremely helpful, three categories of actions that leads to kufur. There are things which are considered actions, things which are belief, in the category of beliefs, and things which are in the category of what you call uh, utterances or statements. So in the category of actions, for example, there are certain actions like prostrating to an idol, which is clearly kufur. But there are other, as we said just now, the kaba'ir, the other enormities, it is only kufur if it comes with istihlal. And then there is a category of beliefs which we have outlined, like false theological beliefs. And then there are categories of statements, yes, which is called the mubtilat ash-shahada. Yes, the statements which if uttered leads to it nullifies your shahada. And if a person were to utter such things, then the consequences of the nullification of the shahada were to follow, and he is to be reprimanded, to be demanded to make tawbah. And if he makes tawbah, then it is accepted, let us say. Walhasil. So with these discussions, as we know, there are certain historic statements made by the ulama in the Islamic intellectual tradition, like that which is recorded in the Siyar A'lam an-Nubala of Imam al-Dhahabi, yes, on the authority of Imam Ibn Zahir as-Sarakhsi, if I'm not mistaken, that he met Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari on his deathbed, upon which Imam Hasan al-Ash'ari said, I do not make takfir, yes, of the dangers of takfir. Yes, I do not make takfir of the people of the Qibla. Yes, I do not make takfir of the people of the of Qibla. Despite of Imam al-Ghazali, Imam Abu Hasan al-Ash'ari being a theologian, basically deleting between spheres is kufur and what is not. And this, despite his brilliant productions and his contributions to the theological debate, and especially the Can you hear me now? Assalamualaikum. Okay. When was I cut off? Did I? Oh, okay. Did I mention Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari statement? And did you get to go on? Okay. And of Ibn Taymiyyah, did we get that? Okay. Yes. So as we said of Ibn Taymiyyah, he said that he's fearful of making takfir of the people of Ummah, and he then quotes a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in which it is said that um, only a believer, yes, only a believer uh, would be making his wudu, or would be persistent in his making wudu in his making salah. So therefore, Ibn Taymiyyah said that as a conclusion to this, that if a person were to be persistent in making wudu, yes, then they are the Ahlul Qibla, certainly. If so, yes, certainly, yes, we do not want to make takfir of such people. So this discussion is very important, I think. While as we said just now, there were the other subtlety or the other extreme. So the extreme is the extreme of the Khawarij, who claims, yes, who claims that that a person can be ruled to be a kafir, yes, for an enormity. The Ahlul Sunnah is in between, whereby they say that the person who commits great sin, he's a fasik, yes, to be sure. It is not that his sins does not harm him, but merely the fact that we cannot attribute to him the greatest of sins. Then there is the other extreme, as we said, it is the sin, the extreme of the murji'ah. Yes, from the word irja. Yes, from the word irja is to postpone, or to postpone judgment pertaining to them. Some of the so according to the murji'ah, they have this other extremity in which they say that if a person has iman, then no sin shall harm them. Yes, no sin shall harm them. In fact, in some of their books, it is even uttered that in truth, although it is only the believers who enjoy Jannah or paradise, the kafir in the kafir in nar, in hellfire, will be made to dwell like whales in an ocean. It is not so terrible, but certainly it is not good like that. So they extrapolate beyond, yes, until it removes the limits of justice. And then of course there is in the Fiqhul Akbar of Imam Abu Hanifa, there is a discussion that some of them claims that there is a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in which there will be an eventual time in history, or eventual time in the hellfire of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it will be destroyed. Yes, it will be destroyed. Which means that there will no longer be any inhabitants in the hellfire, except that everyone will eventually be admitted into paradise. Imam Abu Hanifa said it is interesting that of course the muhaddithun, or the others, let us say the other fuqaha who relies on the science of hadith primarily, and will not entertain any hadith which is not of acceptable stature, will not tolerate, yes, which will not tolerate even contemplating, supposing the hadith was true. But Imam Abu Hanifa and the Maturidi, who many of them were Hanafis likewise, he entertained the possibility. He said, well, supposing it is true, he said, supposing that this hadith is true, it is established, then we interpret, yes, we make the ta'wil that it rather refers to sections, yes, because under the general rubric, as we know, that in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises eternal punishment to those who are kafir. Yes, eternal punishment to those who are kafir. And this eternity or eternal punishment is equivalent to the enormity of their sin. We cannot imagine a greater sin than kufr or shirik, yes, or kufr, shirik being a category of it, because here is the greatest possible distance between human being and God, and the greatest possible meaning of indebtedness, which is the indebtedness for existence and everything that we possess. And then on the condition, of course, yes, on the condition that we have been presented with the Quran, we've been presented with the data of prophecy properly. Yes, on this condition, at least Imam al-Ghazali seems to hold such a position that that if even if you live in a time of which prophecy is known, but you're not given a proper presentation of it, yes, then perchance, yes, perchance Allah Subhanahu wa Taala might try you again like that. But and seeing that whether or not you reject. But nevertheless, uh, Testing. Can you hear me now? Okay. Alhamdulillah. I thank you everyone for your patience. Inshallah. So I'm not sure where was I cut off? Can you still hear me? Testing. Is it on the argument of let us say al kufur and I remember we were speaking about the Murji'ah and that the Murji'ah believe, on oh yes, so Imam Abu Hanifa was speaking about the supposing that hadith were true, then the ta'wil of the hadith is that it is only the sections of which dwelling within it are the believers who need to spend a time to be purified of their sins will be destroyed, because they will not suffer permanently, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not treat equally the person who has even a grain of iman compared to those who doesn't. Yes. Of course, in the as we have mentioned the last time, in the in the Sharah Jawharatul Tauhid of Imam Asawi, he mentions the possibility of the of a good deed of the kafir benefiting him, and this benefit is insofar as it may lighten the punishment of hellfire, but it does not include, let us say, escape from hellfire. When we have clarified what is meant by kufur, and the theological discussions pertaining to what Imam Al-Ghazali said about whether or not a person has been presented with the true doctrine of Islam or not. We have also said that as for the believers who have committed major sins and minor sins, then their fate in the afterlife is dependent freely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should desire to forgive them, He may. And if He decides to punish them, it is still within the limits of His justice. And further, within the same text of Imam al-Nasafi here, it is mentioned that the intercession or ash-shafa'atul anbiya, and also others who are given freedom to give shafa'ah, is attested even for those who have committed major sins and minor sins. And of course, there are other greater details about this, and especially about the to prove this, the fact that against the Khawarij, that the committers of sins are not kafir is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's statement in the Quran, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who have iman, tubu ilallahi taubatan nasuha, that you are supposed to commence upon tawbah, yes, sincerely. And that would mean that for as long as they are mu'minin, yes, they will not be removed from such foes. So I think that is the extent that we wish to cover today. We have discussed about the Quranic meaning, the semantic content of kufur in the Quran. We have discussed Imam Al-Ghazali's conditions of understanding these matters properly, yes, as the asrar of Alamul Malakut, and we have then tried to explain the paragraph in Aqid al-Nasafi pertaining to the committing of major sins and minor sins, and how it does not lead to kufr so long as it is not istihlal or making halal that which is haram, or making or challenging what is fundamental in the belief. Yes, so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us benefit from our iman, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us against our nafs. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us greater understanding of His deen. and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala count us in this world and in the akhirah amongst the mu'mineen, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gather us with the choices amongst them, the salihin, the anbiya, wal mursalin, wa siddiqeen, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. You have any questions or points of discussion, disagreement? Tafaddal. That is Imam Asawi. Of course, the Jawharatul Tawheed have had several authoritative commentaries, but I like Imam Sheikh Ahmad bin Muhammad Asawi al-Maliki because it's a very clear commentary and also quite simplified with regards to it is not too lengthy in his discussion. Another authoritative commentary on the Jawharatul Tawheed, which takes a cross-disciplinary approach and it is daqiq, is Imam al-Bajuri's Sharah of the Jawharatul Tawheed. Any other question? No? Okay, then inshallah, let us end our session inshallah with Kafaratul Majlis and Suratul Asr. Thank you everyone.